2018 edition of the City Connection. It's a live call-in program where you, citizens of Grand Rapids, can ask your mayor about local issues. With Community Media Center, I'm Linda Galash, and Grand Rapids Mayor Rosalind Bliss is live in the studio today to cover some of the topics of interest to you. We'll get to your questions in that segment of the show, but today we also welcome into the show conversation about parks, trees, green spaces. We'll have in studio with Mayor Bliss Dia Noble. She's with Friends of Grand Rapids Parks, and she'll join us on air later in the show. You also have opportunity to connect with the mayor. We have a live call-in section. We mentioned about that, and that's how you do it. You do it with the phone, 616-459-4881, but even easier, email at cityconnection@grcmc.org. Through Twitter, it's at GRTVaccess, or on GRTV's Facebook page. GRTV's Facebook page is also a way you can connect with us on your questions. City Connection broadcasting live today. It's here at GRTV's Livewire Channel 24, as well as streaming live at therapidian.org. Mayor, welcome to the April show.
Yeah, thank you. I know, I was just saying.
We were just
March,
here, right?
Yeah, March went by so quickly. So it's good to be back. Happy spring.
Glad to have you. Yeah. A lot going on, so a
Yes.
ton of things to talk about. A number of hearings, some action, some policy. Let's dive into some of the bigger ones. Youth interaction policy for the police department. That is something that was just adopted.
Yeah. Yes. So that's a great one, and a couple other things about the police department. So earlier in March, we had our second community forum with the members of the Police Policy and Procedure Review Task Force. So we had that down at the library. We had a great turnout. At that meeting, we actually talked about the youth interaction policy. And then the task force members, and if you remember, the task force is made up of both community members and members from the police department working in partnership with 21st Century Policing to review city police policies and procedures. And so the task force, when they met in March, they reviewed the policy. The chief also reviewed the policy with his group of young people that he meets with called Impact. So he has a youth advisory board called Impact. He reviewed the policy, the draft policy with them, received feedback, it was finalized, and it was presented to the City Commission at our last meeting. And this policy spells out the expectations around how the police department interacts with and responds to youth.
Great to involve youth at this level, because there is a lot of youth action right now calling for change in that can address gun violence. So it's activating youth for sure on that level.
Yeah, and the policy is a good one. I mean, I think it sets a really clear expectation about using least restrictive types of responses with young people when police are called. But more than that, and the chief did a great job talking about this during our City Commission meeting, it's not just the policy that sets really clear expectations, but it's also the training that is coupled with that. So the police department has taken on some additional training really specific to responding to young people. And then, so you have the training, the more intensive training and working with youth. And I think Deputy Chief Payne talked a little bit about this last time he was with us on the show. So you have the training, the specialized training, you have the policy, and then you also have additional follow-up that the department can do every time that they have an interaction with youth. And they can use that as a training tool.
So one of the more recent incidents that were of issue seemed to be about not recognizing the subject as youth. Yeah. How do we address that?
Yeah, you know, so training helps with that. You know, I even remember when years ago when I first started working with young people through my job as a social worker, I went through really intensive training on working with young people and de-escalation and responding when kids get upset. And that really is valuable training, and through that training you do get a better sense of picking up on how do you gauge the age of a young person, and sometimes it's just really hard. You know, there are kids. I mean, I ran into a young man that I worked with at St. John's years ago at a recent event, and you know, he's now like 6'4", and he still looks like a little one to me, but he's so tall, and I can see how even though he's 17, he could easily be mistaken for someone older just purely because of his height. And so I do think the training helps, but more than that, it's the expectation around how do we respond to young people when we're called to a scene where there's a young person.
Okay, good to hear the latest on that.
Yeah.
We've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to keep moving right along. Today, I think it was, the city announced a pretty big, ambitious project connected to street upgrades, restoration, as part of that Vital Streets plan that was put out a few years ago.
Yeah, so it's so funny too. Speaking of streets, yes, we did. So if you remember a couple years ago, the community stepped up and they agreed to continue our income tax with the money from the income tax extension being dedicated to streets. And so we pretty aggressively started working on a plan for that. Identifying what streets were top priority 1 to priority 2, priority 3, and then the last few years we've been actively working away at both repaving, reconstruction, sidewalks, and so a couple things happened. One, we have the money that dedicated from our income tax extension that we'll be spending this construction season. But then at the state level, the state passed an infrastructure package that included an additional $1.47 million. The total was about $75 million, but $1.5 million roughly comes to the city. So we'll be moving forward on using those funds this construction cycle. And so that's what came out today is our plan to spend about $11 million this construction cycle. So you'll see lots of detours and street construction as we continue to move forward on improving our infrastructure, which we know is so desperately needed.
So that element of the state contribution is what went away for a while, kind of allowed streets to degrade to a level that it was costing more to bring them back up to just sufficient, let alone if there had been regular maintenance.
Yeah, it's really twofold. So years ago, during the economic downturn, the state cut funding to local units. We didn't have as much money, even in capital, from the state for streets. And then at the local level, typically we will try to move money from other pots. If we have like carryover dollars, we'll put that towards capital. So during the economic downturn, when we were struggling to balance our budget, as was the state, we really lost funding, didn't lose funding, but we didn't have the funding locally or at the state level to put into streets. And so for a number of years, we weren't able to do the kind of upkeep that we needed to do. And so we're doing catch up right now. So it's kind of this perfect storm between not getting the funds from the state, but also just not having the local funds either to meet the needs. And so a lot of the street reconstruction that we're doing right now is because of that.
I thought I read that there was an award or a recognition for the Vital Streets plan, and that makes me think there's something innovative about what's coming up. Can you add to that?
Yeah, so the Vital Streets plan is really if you haven't seen it yet, it's an incredibly comprehensive plan that had a lot of community engagement and input into the plan. And I would say what makes it unique is that it includes an asset management plan of all of our streets in the city. And it's not just streets, but it's also sidewalks, and it incorporates our policy around having complete streets. And so it is a really well thought out plan that identifies, what we need to do each year to get us to what we call our streets being in fair condition. We would love for them to be in excellent condition, but we also know that we live in Michigan, and just like this winter we just had, whenever you have really severe freeze-thaw, where the temperature fluctuates so much, it's very hard on our streets, and we know it degrades them more quickly. So in the plan, with the asset management plan, the plan identifies, okay, what streets right now can we do some work on to extend their life? Which streets need full reconstruction? Which streets can we do some work on today, but it'll extend their life for maybe 5 years, and we can push them out? So it's a very comprehensive plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
On that subject of improvements throughout the city, there was a hearing recently, maybe last week, about the Uptown Business Improvement District.
Yes.
And did that happen?
Yes, it did. So, so throughout the city, we have seen a number of corridor improvement districts. So Uptown was the first one, I think going on 10 years ago. And then now you have others as well. So West Side has a CID, it's called a CID, Corridor Improvement District. And so does the North Quarter and Michigan Street, Southtown. So the CID captures tax increment. So you set the base of where the property values are. Any incremental increase, the CID can capture a portion of that and spend it only on infrastructure, kind of like the DDA downtown. So CIDs are like mini DDAs. And then Uptown is one of the few CIDs that has also a bid, and that is similar to the Downtown Improvement District. So the bid is a special assessment that property owners in Uptown willingly pay, and they can use those dollars for all kinds of beautification, marketing, PR. And so in Uptown, if you go to Uptown and you see the flowers and the bike racks and the signage, all of that is paid for with the bid. And so that's what those dollars were approved. It's a special assessment. So it comes back before the City Commission every single year for approval, and that's what we just recently approved.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how soon? Start seeing some things pretty quickly then with the weather turning?
Yes, you will. And Uptown Bid, they use those dollars in a number of ways. They hire a crew to come in and do cleaning, and they clean up the trash, and they have garbage cans that are a little nicer than other districts because they've been able to use some of those funds. So you will start to see, they have banners, so you'll see all of that in the Uptown district, which is like Easttown, Wealthy, Cherry Street, East Fulton.
Okay.
Yeah.
A couple other changes with the city, staffing-wise, maybe some updates, but there is now a new city clerk named.
There is. So we went through the interview process for city clerk. We initially had 3 final candidates that we were moving forward. One of those final candidates dropped out. So last week, the City Commission, we had a community open house where community members could come and meet the final candidates, and they provided feedback. So we had feedback cards. And then on Thursday, the City Commission, we did final round interviews with the 2 final candidates. And at the end of that, we voted and selected Joel Hondorp he's currently the Byron Township clerk, has been in that role for I think 22 years, if I remember right, at least 20, has a ton of experience, and so we selected him as our next city clerk. So we're working on contract language right now, and then we anticipate that will move forward with the contract and that he'll be sworn in at the end of April.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's the first time. It was interesting. I don't know if you watched the City Commission meeting, but this is the first city clerk that we've had that is not an internal candidate in at least 25 years. So it was an interesting process, and both candidates had great experience as clerks. One was a county clerk from up north in Montcalm, and then obviously Joel from Byron Township. Both very active at the state level. Both have been recognized by state associations as Clerk of the Year. So they both were clearly qualified candidates, and then it was just a matter of fit. And so Joel, I think there are a number of things that the commission appreciated about Joel. He has a lot of energy. He has some interesting, innovative ideas about taking the clerk's office out into the neighborhoods, really doing more direct outreach and connection, being more active on voter education, voter registration. And he had done quite a bit of research about what's been done in the past and where are opportunities for growth in the future.
Came with great information then at that point.
Yeah.
Right. And then the other position that we know is kind of in a reboot is the city manager seat. So tell us where that one stands.
Yeah. So at our last City Commission meeting, we had a gentleman from the new firm that we're working with, Springstead Waters. His name is Art Davis. He came, presented to the full commission a tentative timeline. He is currently working on a candidate profile, and we are hoping to have that finalized by April 9th, April 10th, mid next week. And then the plan is to have the position reposted by April 13th. We are going to leave the posting open for a longer period of time, for 8 weeks. And then as we get closer to that 8 weeks and we have a sense of the applications that we've received, we will finalize the plan for interviews and community forums. And so that part we're still working on. I appointed a subcommittee of the City Commission, so myself, Commissioner Lanier, and Commissioner O'Connor, to meet with Art and walk through a plan for the process. And so that hasn't been finalized yet, but what the commission did decide is to update the candidate profile and get the position reposted by April 13th and have it open for 8 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, at 15 past the hour, it's time for us to take a break. When we come back, Mayor Bliss will be with Dia Noble. She is Community Engagement Coordinator with Friends of Grand Rapids Parks. Be right back after this.
WYCE is a world of music. We aim to shine a light on underserved musical artists in a non-commercial format with no advertisements. Volunteers come in to create personalized music programming that broadcasts over the air at 88.1 FM to West Michigan and via the internet to listeners all over the world. These listeners sponsor our efforts, keeping WYCE independent and community-owned. Musicians use the station to broaden their audience and build support for their latest projects by submitting their music to be included in our broadcast and performing live in studio. Businesses find their customers through underwriting, nonprofits inform the community to their mission, and listeners stay informed about local events. We believe that music is a powerful force that creates quality relationships in our community, that speaks to our emotions, and provides the soundtrack to our lives.
The Wealthy Theater is Grand Rapids' local movie theater and performance center. Since 1998, it has been a host to nationally touring music groups, local theater performances, and a variety of community events. Today, the Wealthy Theater is not only a landmark community treasure with historic significance, but a pioneer in the infusion of technology and traditional theater. Underneath the elegance and classic sensibility that defines Wealthy Theater, there is a matrix of new technologies. The theater is completely digital and outfitted with cameras and microphones for concerts, theater and comedy troupes, speakers and lecturers, and so much more. Experience all that Wealthy Theater has to offer. And bring a friend. Be surprised by the Wealthy Theater.
Hello and welcome back. I'm so excited today to have with me Dia Noble. She is with Friends of Grand Rapids Parks, which is one of my favorite nonprofits in town.
Thank you.
I have lots of them, but this is really one of my favorites because I work so closely with Friends on so many projects. And Dia is the Community Engagement Coordinator.
Yes.
Did I get that right? Okay, good. So today we're going to talk to Dia a little bit about her, about the work at Friends, and you have a very busy upcoming spring and summer schedule.
As
so
always.
Let's talk about that, and then we can talk in general about some of the initiatives around parks and urban forestry, and give the community an update on what you're working on.
Alrighty.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about you? How long have you been with Friends? What's your background?
Well, I just joined the Friends team in October. I actually come from a background in youth development work and pre-college programming. So a lot of my work has been in that focus, especially with middle school and high school teens, young adults, just really prepping them for life after high school.
Nice.
I moved to Grand Rapids a few years ago, so I'm still relatively new to the city in general. I was Boy Scouts before I came over to Friends, and so that was my life for 3 years, and then Friends snatched me up, and here I am enjoying this work now.
Oh, great. So where did you grow up then?
I grew up in the Flint area, right on the north side of Flint in a community called Beecher.
Nice.
That is home.
Nice. Well, we're glad to have you in West Michigan.
Thank you.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your role at Friends.
So it's a new role. So not only am I new, but the position is completely new to the organization.
Nice.
And Stephanie had this goal, our executive director, to make sure that we're more involved with the community and really getting the community engaged. and what's happening and what we're doing in our efforts, not only with trees, but also with parks and green spaces. It takes a community, and to transform some of those images or to get people active in their public spaces, they have to have some ownership in it. And so you can't give someone ownership if you're not talking to them consistently. So that's where I come in, and it's a very fun role. It has its challenges, but I like people. I like meeting people. I believe in a sense of belonging, and I believe that this role was created to help create that space.
Yeah. Well, I love that. In fact, I recently met with Stephanie. We were talking about parks, and I've always said our parks and public spaces belong to the community, and we want the community to feel like they do belong, but also that they own it. This is their space. This parks especially. You know, I want to see so many more people in our parks and feeling like they have ownership of our park space and green space throughout the city. So I love that. And I know that Friends just went through last year a strategic planning process, and I think through that process, this was one of the goals that came out of it. You want to talk a little bit about that? Well,
yes. Now we're at the new strand of where Friends is now. I believe Friends in itself has always been just very reactionary. You know, when it was founded, it was reacting off of, you know, the need with Parks and Recs being depleted, and then there was the Emerald Ash Borer issue, and then there was a reaction for that, and now it's in this very great role where it can be proactive about something and take on a stewardship and more advocacy role, which is really, really great. And so you see this shift now. It's more so, how do we transfer what we've been doing to the hands of residents so that they care, one, and then two, how do they sustain what we've been trying to do. So that's a big part of what's happening, operating out of just three very basic buckets. One, activating parks and green spaces. Two, helping with the tree canopy goal. And three, fundraising for special projects in our parks. Nice. So if someone is completely unfamiliar with Friends of Grand Rapids Parks, why don't you tell us a little bit about the organization as a whole? Coming up on 10 years. 10 years. So Friends was founded almost 10 years ago. 10 years ago. Which is hard to believe. I bet that's how you got it. I know. I was one of the founding members of Friends, and have worked with them really closely over the years, whether it was years ago to raise money to help open swimming pools, or to help with a parks millage, or out cleaning up our parks years ago, as you said, when the Parks Department was really working with a skeleton crew. So if someone is not familiar with Friends, why don't you give an overview of the organization and what you do? So an overview of Friends is we are really about mobilizing people and mobilizing residents and really activating. When we say activating, we mean getting people out to their parks and public spaces to do meaningful activities, or maybe just a walk, or just to make it a very make it your background, your backyard. Like, how do I go out and I just walk out and just take a nice stroll through the park, or things to look forward to in your park. Also dealing with environmental justice in its own way when it comes to tree canopies, and making sure that every neighborhood has a 40% tree canopy goal, very close to. And so being very strategic at looking at areas that are very low in tree canopy percentage, and making sure we're educating residents and getting them excited about the potential of planting a tree, you know, in their yard or on their block, or, you know, anything of that nature. And also, you know, with millage dollars, sometimes it just isn't enough money to take care of everything you want to have taken care of in the park. And friends can come in and kind of just help meet those needs or fill the gaps as needed. So as a whole, that's kind of what we do. Organizing volunteer projects. We have special groups and corporates, and everyone loves doing volunteer projects. And the first thing they think of is, oh, let's just go to the park and, you know, pick up trash. And I'm like, you don't need a special program to do that. So we definitely like to put together meaningful projects. You know, in the fall we did the 6B painting where we repainted the playground because all of the murals were all faded. Just something that you can walk away with and say, man, we really did that. And you can take someone by. So definitely creating opportunities and spaces for people to really take ownership in parks, trees, and public spaces. Yes. So I know spring and summer is a very busy time for parks and for Friends of Grand Rapids Parks. In fact, I've already seen a number of events pop up in my social media feed. Why don't you talk a little bit about the next couple months and spring? Because I know spring is an important time. Well, this is going to be my first spring with Friends, and so I am already anticipating the whirlwind that is to come. But the first thing we have is the Mayor's Greening Initiative.
Yeah.
This is going to be our second year, but our third event with this. And it's really, this is the first time we're doing it on a Saturday. So typically it's been done during a weekday. And we moved it with the residents in mind to really make sure that people who live in the area have the opportunity to be involved in the tree planting that's happening. So we've been out, we've been flyering and door knocking and making sure everyone has a voice and everyone feels welcome and they can come out. So that's coming up on April 28th. It's a Saturday from 9 to 12. And we're going to follow that though with a nice celebration. So from 12:30 to 2 o'clock, we'll bring some food out and we'll hang out and we'll have a good time and get to meet each other and get to share. It's going to be my first tree planting, and so I'm sure it'll be just a good time to just reflect and powwow with a neighbor that I just met by putting my very first tree in the ground.
That's right. And that is a fun event, and there's a number of things leading up to it. So if you're not familiar, April 28th is Arbor Day. So we're doing it on Arbor Day this year. A couple details about that. The week leading up to the tree planting on the 28th, I'll be out in schools giving away saplings to kids. That's always so fun. We'll have a proclamation we do with children in the community. Friday night, we'll be giving away 100 trees. So for a tree giveaway, this year we're over on the west side, and so we'll be doing it over on the west side at Sullivan Field. And then on Saturday, as you said, we'll be kicking off and we'll be planting about 300 trees throughout the neighborhood in parks and public spaces, so in the right-of-way. And we'll have those locations identified. And we're going to be doing large trees this year, big ball and burlap trees. Last year, we did a little bit smaller trees, but we did like 450 trees last year. And so this year we decided to go, so every year for the Mayor's Green Initiative, we are moving the tree planting around the city. So we started on the expressways the first year. Last year we were over by MLK Park. This year we're over on the west side. And one of the ways that we decide where to plant is we look at what the current tree canopy is in that neighborhood. And we're trying to really target the neighborhoods that, as you said, as Dia said, are really below 40%. But actually the neighborhoods we've done last year and now this year are significantly below 40%. So we're trying to plant those trees. And it's not just aesthetics. People ask me sometimes, you know, why trees? And I say a number of reasons. One, trees are so critical to air quality. And we know we have air quality sensors throughout the city, and we know that in urban areas the air quality is not as good as we want it to be. So trees help with that. And then we also know that trees help with water runoff, and that they add a lot to the urban experience. So all of those reasons. And then also, if you don't know this, I'm sure you probably know this, the city is considered a designated city of service. And what that means, it's a national initiative that mayors take on, and part of that is that as mayor you have to support service projects throughout your city. And so when I became mayor, I decided to support a number of service projects, the tree planting being one of them. The river cleanup is another one. We do that in the fall. Last year we did a Habitat Humanity build, myself and a group of millennials, and then we partner with United Way around service projects. And so we want to really be known as a community that gives back, and this is one way that we do that. So we're so excited for the Greening Initiative. You can find more information about it at the Friends of Grand Rapids Parks website. I'll be out there planting trees. I'll be out there Friday and Saturday. Would love to have you join us. And with that, we'll wrap up this segment of this show, and then we'll answer questions in a minute with Dia.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The Rapidian for the community provides an alternative.
To be the eyes of somebody who's not there.
It's more honest, more authentic, and more true.
And you do have the freedom to talk about things because they're things that need to be talked about, not because they'll get readers or viewers or clicks.
Sometimes it feels intimidating to write a news story or to write a story about a community issue. What I love about the Rapidian is that they make it really simple and easy.
So it's not like you have to meet this deadline by this time.
I'll be eating a sandwich in one hand and then I'm like typing in the other.
I love the freedom to be able to write from wherever.
I think it's a really powerful experience when people are able to tell their story and to be heard.
Anyone can have a voice.
Anybody can speak.
It's a platform for the community to tell its own story in a very authentic way, and that's powerful.
The community has to be involved in order for it to be sustainable. And so it tells you something about our community.
How do you build a strong local food economy? Meet Chris. Chris is opening Osteria Rosa, a locally sourced Italian restaurant in a building brought back to life by 616 Development. But he doesn't know any local farmers to supply him with food year-round. This is Melissa. Melissa runs the Fulton Street Farmers Market and publishes a long list, even in the dead of winter, of available produce, meats, bakery goods, and more on the Rapidian. This is Amy. Amy wants to do more to support the farmers and her local food economy. Amy talks to Melissa, who introduces her to farmers at the Fulton Street Farmers Market, and Amy, in turn, publishes their stories, also on the Rapidian. Chris hears about the Rapidian and now has access to a local grocery list and information that he needs to make connections with local farmers. He feeds his patrons with local food year-round. Connections multiply, meals are shared, a stronger local food economy is built.
Welcome back to City Connection live on GRTV Livewire Channel 24. We're back in the studio with Mayor Bliss as well as Dia Noble with Friends of Grand Rapids Parks. Lots of great information there, but we didn't get real far, so I'm glad we have a little extra time. There's already questions for you, Dia. The first one is, this is from Dennis. It's an email question. He says, I live in Grand Rapids, but I'm at least a 15-minute walk from any park with a playground that my kids can play on. Are there plans to increase access to parks in city neighborhoods? So.
Well, I will pass this to Mary Bliss because she already has a really, really great initiative to make sure that everyone is 10 minutes from a park or a public space. Yeah. So maybe you would like to share more about at least what made you,
I will.
What encouraged you to do that.
Yeah. So Dia's absolutely right. So a couple of years ago, probably about a year ago, we embarked on an initiative to identify areas of the city that need a park or a playground, with the goal that any child living in the city will be within 10 minutes walk of a park or a playground. Actually, a playground is our goal. But it's not just 10-minute walk, it has to be a safe walk. So even looking at accessibility, so you may have a park on the other side of the expressway within 10 minutes walk, but it's not a safe passage. And so we're really looking at different parts of the city where we are what we call park deficient, and we're identifying areas that we can build not just playgrounds but parks as well. So we have 3 areas of the city where we are specifically targeting adding green space, parks, and playgrounds. That was incorporated into our recent Parks Master Plan, and so we have maps right now that you can find online, but then we have a team at the city, including our Parks Director, that are actively looking at where we can add green space.
What are the areas you know to be deficient and maybe among the first that might receive some of this attention?
So right now, largely in the 3rd Ward. So in the 3rd Ward, if you look at all of our parks in the city, about 24% of them are in the 3rd Ward. And if you look specifically at neighborhoods in the 3rd Ward, there are a number of neighborhoods where children don't have access to a park within walking distance. We've done some work over the last 10 years. Joe Taylor Park was added, and then Pleasant Park was added, but we still have more work to do. And then also up along Granville area, so kind of on the southwest side. And if you think about the city, the areas where we need parks and playgrounds largely fall in the areas of the city where you have a lot of industrial use, but also where you have neighborhoods that are right adjacent to industrial use, and those are the areas that we're looking at right now.
So how does the city come about acquiring space for a new park? I know there was a time when there were a lot of vacant houses or vacant land. Things are changing. Is that still the method?
Yeah, they are changing. It's really it's a multi-pronged approach. It could be vacant property. So we actually have been looking at vacant property, but then also looking at property that is underutilized, or even areas of the city where there may be green space already, but it's not public. And then we're also partnering really closely with our schools. So a lot of the schools have green space and playgrounds, and so we are in the process right now of updating our joint use agreement with Grand Rapids Public Schools. And especially over the last year, we've developed a really strong relationship with the schools around connecting children to nature and connecting children to parks. And we have a number of initiatives through our Parks Department, specifically with Grand Rapids Public Schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
We do have another one. Let's see, Dia, you can jump in on this one too. This is from Dean, and he says, as an avid disc golfer, I'm frustrated with how few parks in GR have courses. Who do us disc golfers need to talk to in order to get more courses built?
Yeah.
Wow, to get more courses built, that is definitely an advocacy you would have to make with the Parks and Rec Department. Right now there are two, one in Garfield Park and one in Riverside Park. And then there's also Disc Downtown, who has the portable hosts that you can travel, to parks with you. They may be good people to connect with to see if maybe they rent those out for you to use at your local park. But yeah, that requisition has to Parks and Rec, and maybe we can do some engagement, survey some neighborhoods, and see if there's a neighborhood that would actually want that in their local park, and work on some fundraising to put that in.
Yeah. You talked a bit about the stakeholder aspect, that the community to own it and that sort of thing. So this would maybe come under that sort of umbrella.
Yeah, and I would encourage whoever this individual is to definitely reach out to the city and talk to our Parks Director, David Marquardt. And I mean, honestly, the great parks that exist in our city and the amenities in them largely have been driven by the community and by the neighborhood. So recently we've added pickleball to some of our parks, and that's because people were playing pickleball and they wanted a place to go. We've added, in the winter, we've added portable ice rinks, and that's because the neighbors stepped up and they said we want something to do in the winter with our kids. The dog park that exists happened because people came together and said we really need a dog park in our city. Community gardens, many of them are on parkland, and those happen because the neighbors step up and say this is what we want to do and this is the vision for this space. So I want to encourage people to give us a call and also assure them that their voice matters, and a lot of what you see in parks today is because people cared deeply about their parks and came to the community with an idea.
We actually have a great program that helps with that. We have a Parks Alive program, which is really about creating these leaders to champion their local park. And sometimes it's a great idea and it's just about getting the mobility to do it. And so that program goes over how to properly advocate for some things that you want, as well as planning events in your local park. And so that is a great resource on how to navigate advocating for something that you want in your park or green space.
Good reminder.
How about some specifics in the numbers? How many parks do we have? How many of them have playgrounds? How many have swimming pools? Just some of those basics.
We have over 75 parks and public spaces, at least that's what they're classified as. That will also include some of our public cemeteries as well. With pools, we have 3 that are still open and running every summer. Now, how many have playground? I do not have that number off the top of my head. But I know, at least when I drive through, there's a majority that I drive by that at least have some kind of playground. And I live in the 3rd ward, so I took my goddaughter to Mulek Park not too long ago. We froze our noses off on the playground, but it was still a good time.
Yeah, and there's so many great parks. So if you go on the city website or even on Friends website, you can pull up all the parks. And you can look at where they're located and the amenities. And what some people don't know is that we actually own a city park in Ottawa County. So one of our largest natural areas, Almond Park, is actually it's a city-owned park. It was land that was donated to the city a very long time ago, and the city still maintains that. There's a camp out there, so we lease some space for a camp. But it's a if you're looking for a nature preserve, if you love to go snowshoeing, it's a great park to go to.
Out past Lake Michigan Drive.
Yeah, you take Lake Michigan Drive and
towards
it's there.
college.
Yep, towards college. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, now that you mentioned that, I recognize the city emblem on the sign, which sort of doesn't make sense, but now I understand.
Yes, yeah. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful park.
So with that park in mind, how many acres?
Oh.
That has to increase it substantially.
Yeah,
it does.
Yes. With counting that, and if you count the schoolyards, the playgrounds where we already have joint use. That's a great question. I don't know off the top of my head. But.
And kind of mixing a couple things you've been talking about, but the tree canopy within our parks, is that a separate figure, or do you know that figure? Trees and parks generally seem to go together well.
They do. They do. So the canopy is broken down largely by neighborhood. Because the goal is to have an overall 40% tree canopy throughout the city. But we broke it down by neighborhood because some neighborhoods, especially the neighborhoods that are largely on the outer ring of the city, their tree canopy is often far greater than 40%. But then you look at downtown because of the just sheer amount of concrete and the built environment. Downtown, we're only at about 5% tree canopy. So when you really take the average of the city, you see all the way from downtown, which is like 5%. Our goal downtown is to get to 10%. Downtown, we will never be at 40% because it's just physically impossible based on the opportunities for trees downtown. So you really want to break apart the city and the different areas based on availability. And so as you move further out from the city core, you get to a larger tree canopy. Some neighborhoods that are under 20%, there's a lot of opportunity to add trees. So it's really spread across by kind of what we consider neighborhoods and districts. But you'll see more trees downtown this spring, and then I have a separate initiative, separate from the Mayor's Greening Initiative, to add tree canopy along the expressways in order to create a greater buffer, especially for the neighborhoods that are right up adjacent to the expressways, to create a buffer from the cars and the expressway to the neighborhood. So that's a separate initiative that I'm actively seeking donated dollars for to help with.
Okay.
There is a tree map on our website under our resources under Friends.
And
you go under resources.
And live and changing like with this next planting.
And you can actually see what trees are plotted where in which neighborhoods and where they are.
And that ties to the tree inventory that we did, right? Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned that the next tree planting initiative is on the west side, and I'm wondering, with the mention that it is lower in this side of town or that particular area, does the recent development that's been focused on the west side affect that, or is it you talking about a different area that was not the percent you're looking for?
Yeah, so development does impact trees, but sometimes in a good way, because the city has really strong requirements for landscaping for new developments. So we require 20% green space, we require a landscaping plan, and we require trees being planted. And so very often you'll see some newer developments that actually have quite a few trees incorporated into the development. And so what we're looking at for the mayor's tree planting is we look at the right-of-way and how many street trees we can plant, as well as how many trees we can plant in the park. So we're really looking at public spaces, public land that we can add trees to. Friday night when we're doing the tree giveaway, that will be so trees can be planted on private property.
Okay. Very interesting information. We're going to wrap up this segment now. Dia Noble, thanks for joining us from Friends of Grand Rapids Parks. And Mayor and I will be right back, but great to learn so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both.
City Connection will be
Hi,
right back.
I'm Kiran Sooth Patel, Managing Editor for The Rapidian. The Rapidian is a proud service of Grand Rapids Community Media Center. Join us for our first community journalism workshop of the year. The session will be held on Tuesday, February 20th from 12 to 1:30 p.m. at the Grand Rapids Public Library main branch. During this session, we will share information about the Rapidian, the basics of community journalism, and how to get started writing an article. This is the perfect opportunity if you've been wanting to learn more about the platform and where to start when it comes to writing an article. We will also go through a writing exercise to get your creative energy flowing as you begin the process. Bring your ideas and questions to the session. Registration is now open on our Facebook page. Lunch and supplies will be provided. To learn more about the Rapidian, visit us online at therapidian.org or find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope to see you there.
How do you build a greener city? Meet Mariah. Mariah cares about the environment in her neighborhood and wants to get the word out about an upcoming tree planting event at Congress School, organized by Friends of Grand Rapids Parks and Brewery Vivant. She knows thousands of people will find out about it if she publishes the story on the Rapidian. Meet John. John cares about the environment, but doesn't know what he can do locally to help. John's friends recommends he check the Rapidian for local events. John, like many other volunteers, finds Mariah's article and decides to go. Together, John, Mariah, Friends of Grand Rapids Parks, and Brewery Vivant help plant trees at their local neighborhood school playground. Community grows, beers are shared, a greener city is built.
Why do local businesses spend their marketing dollars with Community Media Center? Because it's more than just passive advertising. It is an investment in the community that is eager to invest in you. The Community Media Center makes Grand Rapids vital. We collaborate with local businesses and support events in West Michigan. Inclusive. We amplify local voices that tell the diverse and ever-changing stories of our community. Creative. We encourage artists to showcase and expand their talents and to shape the look and sound of Grand Rapids. Marketing with the CMC will let our community know who you are and increase brand recognition for your business. At the end of the day, we are a resource that will keep you connected to the community. Share your message with diverse audiences by underwriting with WYCE, GRTV, Wealthy Theater, and the Rapidian. Join us in building a stronger community through media. Contact us at marketing@grcmc.org.
Welcome back to City Connection here on GRTV Livewire, Channel 24. I'm Linda Glash with Mayor Rosalind Bliss. Now it's your opportunity to take part. We have a question in the queue, but we've been talking a little bit about green spaces, green initiatives. A lot of subjects you can cover, though. Email address here is cityconnection@grtv@grcmc.org. So, Mayor, you had thought of something else after we let Dia go, and it had a little bit to do with parks and greening.
Yeah, let me tell you a few points that came to mind, specifically about trees. Right now, some of you may be noticing that the city has crews out and we're actually cutting down trees in right-of-ways in different spaces. And that's because we have a number of trees that we're calling Priority 1 trees that are dead or dying. And so we'll be removing hundreds of trees. Unfortunately, some of them are maples, and it's just because they've come to the end of their natural life. So you'll see both removal of trees and stump grinding, as well as trees being planted. That was something that the City Commission moved forward on and allocated dollars for about 2 months ago, because we have after those huge windstorms, we had a number of properties damaged because of the limbs, so we made that a priority. So just an FYI on that. And then secondly, about parks, there was recently a story about a partnership between the city and Michigan State University and the county for a park along North Monroe. So there is a piece of property on the other side of 131. It was a mix of property owned by the city, county, and then MSU. We worked in partnership with the Michigan Department, MDNR, to acquire all those properties, and we got a $7.5 million grant from the state to turn those properties into a park. So a couple things that's going to happen. We had to do a couple land swaps with MSU and the county to make that happen. That property, so if you're going North Monroe, it's a property right after 131 on the left-hand side. That property in the future, probably starting next year, will be used as a construction staging site for the river restoration project. And the construction site will be used for about 3 to 4 years. And then after the construction for the river restoration project, then it'll be converted and developed into a park.
Okay.
So, yes,
all right,
and
great.
it'll be beautiful.
All right. Well, we're going to move on to the next question. It's on a subject that there's a lot to say on. This one has to do with housing in a way.
Yes.
It's a question from Conrad, and it says, I work in Grand Rapids but can't afford the rent to move into the city. What is GR doing about rising rent prices?
Yeah.
And housing is a big subject.
It's a significant subject. It takes up a lot of our time on the City Commission. And we've actually been working on this for years. So dating back even to 2015, we had a housing strategies committee that worked really hard to come up with a whole host of recommendations. We know that the market right now is really hot and that the rents have been growing exponentially, and that it's really difficult for people to find affordable housing in our city right now. And so it's going on 2 years ago now, maybe 18 months ago, the City Commission, we had multiple work sessions related to housing. We put together a smaller group called Housing Advisory Committee to really look at all the recommendations that have been provided in the past, to hone in on a handful that we think we could do immediately. So what the City Commission has done over the last, I'd say 8 months, is we've started to implement a number of those recommendations. We're in the process of setting up a affordable housing fund in partnership with the Grand Rapids Housing Commission. That should be in place by the end of next month. We're just working through some legal issues and contracts right now. We have adjusted our pilot program. We've adjusted our neighborhood enterprise zone. We've started a voluntary agreement where developers can come in and voluntarily commit to affordable housing. Right now, there are 4 zoning ordinances that we're looking at. We just had a public hearing on those last week. One of them includes a density bonus for developers that add in affordable housing. One is related to accessory dwelling units. One is related to zero lot lines. And so we're really working hard to figure out what can we do as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, we know that the public sector can only really do so much. We are partnering with our nonprofit housing developers and organizations. And in fact, we just recently approved 5 pilots, which those organizations will apply for low-income housing tax credits at the state level to try to build more affordable housing in the city. So we'll find out about those awards in a couple months. So we are doing what we can. I know it doesn't feel like it's fast enough. I should fill you in on what happened at our public hearing last Tuesday. We heard a lot of feedback from the community. There were a lot of concerns that were raised about the 4 zoning recommendations. So what the City Commission decided to do at the end of the night is to hold off and not move forward with with voting on those 4 recommendations, but to take more time to do some additional community engagement to look at those 4 recommendations, because some people felt really strongly that portions of those recommendations should be part of a larger master plan. And so I'd say over the next 60 to 90 days, we're going to be taking a closer look at those 4, but then also looking at starting our master planning process earlier, likely this year, so that we can be thinking about our next update of the master plan with affordable housing as a center point.
Knowing that affordable housing was big on the focus that you actually spoke to at the beginning of this year,
Yeah.
What else is going on out there right now? Those 4 potential zoning changes, but what else?
Yeah, so the other things we're looking at right now include setting up the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and we'll seed that with about $1.2 million. And then we'll be working with our Housing Commission to look at what we can do to have an immediate impact and use those dollars for some gap funding, potentially smaller scale projects that don't qualify for larger tax credits. We're also looking at a rental application program. We're in conversations with the Housing Commission around that. One thing we've heard from individuals in the community is that they can't afford the application fees. And they may apply for 8 different apartments and have a $50 fee for each one, which can be a significant amount of money for a family looking for housing. We also have done some other things. We Started in partnership with Michigan Department of Health and Human Services and the county and our courts, an eviction prevention pilot program. So that was just launched about 2.5 months ago, and we've already had about 20 families use that program to try to prevent evictions from happening. So we're really looking at what are the different things we can do. We also, this was in December, we approved increasing our down payment assistance program to $7,500, but also expanding the eligibility for that, where families can, if there's a house they want to buy anywhere in the city, they can, and if they're income eligible, they can apply for that program. It's $7,500, and then after 5 years in the home, that amount is wiped. It's like a grant, basically, to assist with that down payment. So we're trying a lot of different things to help, not just with folks being able to find a place to rent that's affordable, but also we know that home ownership is really critical, especially when you look at the need to increase wealth. We know that housing and having a house helps with an asset and wealth building.
Okay,
yeah.
Thanks for that. Very thorough response. We've got about 3 minutes and a couple things just want to touch on real quickly, and that is with March 31st, I believe that was the closing date for the neighborhood matching funds.
Yes.
So how quickly might we see some new projects out of that? Are those being awarded as we speak, maybe?
Yeah, so our goal is to have those awards made within 30 days, and then we want the projects done within 90 days. So I would say that you're going to see some awards and some money out the door pretty quickly, and then hopefully we'll see a whole host of projects yet this spring and into early summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I want to ask about, as it hits April, it always seems to be about the time when budgeting for the next fiscal year is deep underway. That'll probably mean another series of public hearings and public information.
Yes.
So can you just fill us in on the timeline as far as it's sketched out as of right now?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Without a city manager, but you have somebody serving that role right now.
We do. So we do have our interim city manager. He actually started on the budget when Greg was still here, knowing that Greg wasn't going to be here for the budget and knowing that a new city manager wouldn't be able to take that on. So we are moving forward with the budget. You're absolutely right. We need to pass a balanced budget by June 30. That is state law. So we will kick off our budget process on April 24th. The City Commission will meet every single week for 3 to 4 hours going through the preliminary budget. Then we have a public hearing the first week in June, and then we are slated to vote on the budget on June 12th.
So it's there's typically time to engage before you get to that public hearing stage.
Yes.
There's stages of the budget where the public can kind of weigh in and give some feedback along the way. Is that all through the website? Or?
Yep, it's it'll be on the website as soon as it's presented, but then we're also working with a local group to have a user-friendly website where people can go in and look at the budget, revenues, projected expenditures, or at least recommended expenditures. And people will be able to weigh in through that process, and then we'll have a formal public hearing. Okay.
And then as we're closing out, how about where to go on the website to see that information? The website is somewhat new right now, and it's got a lot of features.
It is. So so the preliminary budget hasn't been presented to the full commission yet. It'll be presented on April 24th, and then it'll be right on the homepage. You'll be able to find it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to sum up with before we close out for this month's show?
No, I hope everyone had a wonderful Easter, and if you're like me, you're looking forward to warmer weather.
I'm sure it's going to come. No
it will. It will. Maybe not this week, but it's coming.
Yeah. Well, Mayor Bliss, thanks for another great hour of live City Connection.
Thank you.
This is City Connection on GRTV's Live Wire Channel 24. I'm Linda Galash, and we will see you next month, I believe, on the 7th.
Yeah. Thank you.